Okay, your homework was 1.6, number 3 to 48 all. So I'm going to work number 3 to 48 even with you. I'm sorry, odd with you. So we have number 3, let's do that one. X is greater than 4. Notice that the greater than sign always points to the smaller number. So x has to be bigger than 4. So if we have 4 here, your x is on this side because it's bigger than the number 4. Remember, bigger always is on the right. And because it's a sign like this, you have an open circle. Number 5. You have x is greater than less than or equal to negative 5. So on this one you have an arrow, and this is pointing to the smaller number. So x is smaller than negative 5. So here's your negative 5, and your x is smaller than that. So it's going to be on this side of the negative 5. But notice that there's an equal to sign. So you will have a closed-in dot. This one did not have an equal to or less than. So that's why it's open. So your dot will be open on this one. Your dot will be closed on this one. Okay, so now we have number 7. On number 7, you have 6 is greater than or equal to x. So notice that it's pointing to the smaller number. So your x is going to be smaller than that 6. So here's your line. Here's a 6. Here's a 0. Your x is going to be smaller. This always points to the smaller number. So since it's smaller, it'll be on this side. And notice that it's less than or equal to, so you're going to have to fill in the circle. Okay, that's number 7. Now let's do number 9. Number 9. For number 9, we have x is greater than or equal to negative 3.5. So here's your number line. Here's my 0 right here, and a negative 3.5 goes right there. This is bigger than that. This right here, it's pointing to the smaller number, so that means this is smaller than x. So my x has to be on this side in order that this negative 3.5 be smaller than the x. So it goes like this. It has this line underneath, so you need to fill in the circle. Number 11, we have, in your book, it has here a 3 here and a 1 on this side. Notice that this is shaded in between. So since it's shaded in between, your x will be in between these two numbers, the 1 and the 3. And it points to the smaller number. So 3 is smaller. Sorry, this is a negative 3. And the x is smaller than that. So it's in between. And since the circles are colored in, then you will have the line underneath for equal to. Next we have number 13. Number 13, you have two different. You have a circle here and a circle here, and they're not colored in. And this end is right here, so this is going to be pointing to the smaller number. That's smaller. Hold on. This is going to be, x is your smaller number, so it's pointing. What is this number right here? We have a negative 2, so x is going to be less than negative 2, or on this side, we have x is going to be greater than 4, because this is a 4. Notice that it points to the smaller number. Okay, so now let's go to number 15. Don't know where my eraser's at, so. Number 15. On number 15, we have the same thing. We have a circle right here and a closed-in dot right there, which means your sign will be like this. You'll have your x is less than, or your x is greater than or equal to, because this one has a colored in dot. And then let's fill in the numbers. What number is this right here? -1, so you have a -1 here. On this side we have a 3. So which one of those looks like that? Letter C. Letter C. Alright, let's do number 17. For number 17 we have a -3. And you notice on this one it says graph the compound inequality. So how do we graph this? X is in between those two numbers, so you know that here's a -3, here's a 4. X is going to be in between those two numbers. But since there's no line under there, you're going to have open circles. Open circles for no lines. Now let's do number 19. Number 19 has x is less than 0 or x is greater than 2. So since we have this or right here, we know we're going to have two different ends of the line here. So we have a 0 and a 2, and on this one x is less than 0. It always points to the smaller number, so x has to be smaller than the 0, which is on this side. Notice that there's no line underneath, so you will have an open circle. Over here the same thing, no line underneath, so you will have an open circle. And it points to the smaller number, so 2 has to be smaller than the x. The x has to be on this side. So that is your or. Think of you're rowing a boat and you use your oars. So if you're using your oars, you've got to have one on this side and one on this side. And here's your little boat right here. And here are you, rowing the oars for the oar. Okay, now let's do number 21. Number 21. We have on number 21, x is greater than -2 or x is less than -5. Here we have our or again. Do you remember what we have with the ors? Here's a -5 on this side, -2 on this side, and then we have zeros right here. So what do we have here? X is greater than -2. This is pointing to the smaller number, so this has to be smaller than the x, which means it's on this side. X is less than -5. Less means this is pointing to the smaller number, so this has to be smaller than -5. Here's -5, since it's smaller, goes on this side. Okay, let's do number 23. You are doing the evens by yourself, so I'm helping you with the odds. X minus 3 is less than or equal to -5. Okay, now we're supposed to solve the inequality, so you solve it just as if you would if this were an equal sign. Which means you need to get this x by itself, put this -3 on the other side by adding the opposite. This is minus, so you need to do a plus. So x, that means these cancel out. A -5 and a +3 make -2. So that's our answer for that one. But then it tells you to graph it, so let's graph it. Here's your -2, and x has to be less than that. This is pointing to the smaller number, and it has this line right here, so you need to color it in. Just think of it this way. If you see a line, color in the lines. If you see this line, color in the lines. Okay, now let's do number 25. This isn't so bad, is it? 25, we have 15 minus 3x is greater than 3. Solve it just like you would. Here's your x, so you want to leave that there. Take this number right here, put it to the other side, minus 3x. So the way you put a number to the other side is you just take the opposite sign. So since that's a positive, on this side it's going to be a negative. 3 minus 15 happens to be a negative 12. Okay, so now we're going to divide by this 3, but not just any old 3, a negative 3. A negative 3. What I want you to know is that when you since we are dealing with inequalities, anytime you divide by a negative number, change the sign. We flip it around. So this cancels out, we'll flip it around. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and it'll be positive because these two are negative, which makes it a positive number. So anytime you see you divide by negative, you flip it. Just remember this, we flip over negatives. Woohoo! Flip over negatives. Alright, don't flip out, just flip the sign. 4 plus 3 over 2x. Okay, now let's do this one. Now we have, this x is right here, so we want to leave it there. Don't move it. This is what we want to send to the other side. So minus 4 here, minus 4 here. We get 3 2x. And 13 minus 4 is 9. So far, so good. Okay, now for this right here, you do not have a whole number, you have a fraction. So what do you do with the fraction? You multiply by the reciprocal. So you have 2 2/3 multiplied by the reciprocal, 2/3. So whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. Okay? So these cancel out. You're left with x. And 9 times 2, this is really 9 over 1. So 9 times 2 is 18. And 1 times 3 is 3. And 18 divided by 3 happens to be a 6. So our answer will be x is less than or equal to 6. There's your answer right there. Nice and simple. Now let's do number 29. Ready for number 29? Here we go. Let's do number 29. Number 29, we have 4x plus 14. And then it is less than 3x plus 6. Alright, you notice when we're solving for an equation, what we want to do is we want to have x's on one side and everything else on the other. So we have an x here and an x here. The easiest way to do this is to move the smallest x to the other side. So this happens to be smaller. Let's move it over here. Minus 3x minus 3x. We end up with 1x, or just x, plus 14 is less than 6. Now we need to get rid of that 14, so the opposite of plus here is minus. Minus 14 minus 14, what does that equal? These cancel out. X is less than, what is negative 14 plus 6? That is negative 8. That's your answer. Now let's do number 31. Number 31, we have 21x plus 7 less than 3x plus 16. So to do number 31, what we do is, again, we have an x here and an x here. We need to get those x's together. They need to be a family, cannot be separated. So we'll move over the smaller one. Which one's smaller, 21 or 3? You are so right. It is the 3. 21 minus 3, that leaves us with 18x. Plus 7, less than, these cancel out. 16. So far, so good. Okay, now what do? We take this 7 off of there by this is a plus, so we have to do the opposite, which is a minus 7. So then we're left with 18x is less than 16 minus 7 happens to be 9. So we're doing good so far, doing good. Take this 18 off. How do you do that? Divide by 18. Divide by 18. So our x happens to be less than 1/2. That's our answer for that one. Alright, let's go to number 33. Let's go to 33. For number 33, we have 2x minus 4, 4x plus 6. On this one here, if you notice, we have to distribute. Distribute this. Anytime you see a parentheses, you can distribute. So 2x minus, what's negative 4 times 2? Minus 8 is less than 4x plus 6. Okay, now we need our family to get back together. They're separated. So how do we do this? We put the smallest one to the other side. So 2 is smaller. So let's take it off of here, put it over here. The reason why I used a minus is because this is a positive 2. We need to use the opposite sign. So that way you could say 2 minus 2, which is 0. That's why that cancels out. Negative 8. 4 minus 2 is 2x. Okay, now we have this 2x here, which is good. We have an x. But we need to get rid of this and put it on the other side. So, since this is a positive 6, you take away 6 here. A plus and a minus of the same number make 0, so that's why those cancel out. Negative 8, negative 6, negative 14 is what that equals out to. Now you see this x, it still has that 2 next to it. Need to get rid of it, and how do we do that? Divide by 2. That cancels out. Negative 14 divided by 2, negative 7. There's your answer. By golly geez, I think we got it. Okay, now let's do number 35. You having fun? I hope you are, because I'm not doing this all by myself. I'm doing it with you. Number 35. We have 10 plus 3x is greater than 5x. Now, what's the first thing we do? Remember, I told you, look, here's an x and here's an x. They're supposed to be together. They're a family. How do we do that? Move the smallest one over first. Smallest one is 3x. So, since it's positive, we will make it negative. 10, a positive and a negative of the same number cancel out. 5 minus 3, that is 2. Now what do? We shall divide by the 2. That way those cancel out, that cancels out. And 10 divided by 2 happens to be 5. So there's our answer. 5 is greater than x. Oh, I have not been graphing these for you. I'll graph this one. This is pointing to the smaller number. So if I have a 0 and a 5, smaller is on the left side. The bigger is on the right side. Okay? So this side's small. And then as we go this way, it grows bigger, bigger, bigger. From a 0 to a 5. So since this is pointing to the smaller number, we have to do this way, because x has to be smaller. This is our x. All the shaded area is our x. And you notice there's no lines, so we just do an open circle right there. Okay? Now let's do 37. Number 37. We have -5, then x plus 1, then a 4. On this one, the best way I like to do this one is I like to separate it. I'm going to see where these inequality signs are? Everything that's right there in the middle between those two inequalities, which is this right here, I'm going to put on both sides of what I'm about to do. So -5 is less than x plus 1. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here, like that. So I separated it into two. One goes here, one goes there, so that I could work it out so I don't get confused. And then I just work it out the way I normally would. Okay? So let's work it out the way we normally would. Here's the x. We want to leave that there, so let's take off that 1. So -1 here, -1 here. We have -6 less than x. On this side, -1 here, -1 there. A plus and a minus of the same number cancel out, so now that means all I have left is this x. And 4 minus 1 is 3. So these are my two answers, -6 and 3. And notice this is an OR. How do you graph an OR? The way you graph an OR, here's a -6 here, 0, 3. Let's make my line a little bit longer. Okay. So x, this is pointing to the smaller number. Since it is smaller, that means my -6 has to be greater than that. So there's no equal sign, so it's this way. Or the other way, my x is, and it's an open circle, so it's in between. It's not or. Take that back. We rejoin forces. I forgot to do that part. We rejoin forces. This right here graph is correct, but let me erase it so that I could show you the part I skipped. Sorry about that, but see how this x is here and this x is here? You actually put them right back in the middle, and then you put everything back together. So that way you can see that it's joined in the middle, and you have a 0 and a 3, and on this side a -6, and it's in between. See how these x's, we took it apart, we're supposed to put it back together at the end. That's what I had failed to do. That's why that looked kind of weird. So it's not an or, it's an and. Here we go. That's number 37. Now let's do number 39. On number 39, we have -3, 4 minus x. Now remember, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take what's in the middle, which is this right here, and we're going to put it on this side and this side. So -3, 4 minus x. Then we're going to put it on this side. And now we're going to continue. Here we go. Solve just like you would. Here's a -x, so we're going to get rid of the 4. -4 minus 4, that gives us a -7, -x. Now, we're going to divide by -1. Remember the rule? Anytime you divide by negative, so I'm going to divide this by -1, divide this by -1, you have to change this sign. So, when you divide by negative, you change the sign. So x, and this is a negative and negative, that makes it a positive. Okay? Now let's go to this side over here. We're going to put a -4 here, -4 here, negative x. That 3 minus 4 is -1. Now we have the same thing, a negative right here, so when we divide by -1, we're going to have to change the sign. So this will make that x, change it this way. -1 divided by -1 is a +1. Okay, so make sure that you change these signs because you divided it by a negative. So now we're going to rejoin forces. 7x1. Typically what you do is you write the equation with a smaller number on the left side. So let's do that. So we're just flipping it around, flipping it over. Now make sure you have it done, you flipped it correctly. You see how this is pointing to the 1? Check this. Are you still pointing to the 1? Yes, you are. Look right here. See how this is pointing to the x? Are you still pointing to the x? Yes, so that's correct. The alligator mouth is still eating number 7. The alligator mouth is still eating number 7. It matches, so that's a check. Okay, now let's graph it. To graph this, notice that here's a 1 on this side and a 7 on this side, and your x is in between those two, so you will have it in between. On this side, number 1, we have a closed circle, we have a line, so we have to color in the lines. There's no line here, so it's an open circle. That's how you do number 39. Now let's do number 41. For number 41, we have a -4, 2 plus 4x. There we go. Okay. Again, we're going to take this middle part, put it here and here. So we have a -4, 2 plus 4x, 2 plus 4x. We take that middle part, we put it on both sides. Now, let's get to moving. This x we want to leave there, so we'll take that 2 off, -2 here, -2 here. What do you get? -6 and 4x on this side. Now, let's continue. There's a 4 next to there, so you want to get rid of that 4. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. That cancels that out. Let's go ahead and reduce this. We would have -3/2 less than x. Okay? Let's go to this side. Your x is here, so you want to keep that there. Let's take this 2 off. 4x is less than -2. Now you have a 4 next to there. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. So you have x is less than, let's go ahead and reduce this. What is 2/4? That's a -1/2. So now you have a -1/2. Now let's join forces. May the force be with you. -3/2 x -1/2. So, would you like to graph that? Oh, yes, I would. Thank you very much for asking. Okay, notice that the x again is in between. What is a -3.2? 3/2? That's -1.5. So if I have a 0 here, here's my 1, here's my 2, 1.5 is in between. But look, there's no line there, so it would be an open circle. Now what about this one? It's in between a -1/2. So, oh look, it happens to be right here. Let's make that an open one too. And it's in between those two things right there. There you go. Number 41. Let's do 43. number 43, we have x plus 1 is less than negative 3, or x minus 2 is greater than 0. Now we have an or, so we know that they're going to be on two sides of the, remember what the ors looks like? You're sitting in the middle and you got an or on this side and an or on this side, and you're rowing the boat. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. So let's go ahead and just solve them separately. Minus 1 here, minus 1 here. X is less than negative 4. On this side we are going to add 2, so x is greater than, because those cancel out, 2. Now when we graph, remember we're supposed to have an or. 1, 2, we have a 2 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me stretch this out a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of not even. 2, 3, 4. Alright, here's my negative 4 right here. So x is less than that, so it's going to go this way. Open circle. X is greater than 2, so we're going to have an open circle right here. That's number 43. We have our ors. Okay, now let's do 45. We're almost done. Praise the Lord. Number 45. God is so good. 2x minus 3. So less than or equal to negative 4. Oh, looky here. We have another or. Remember what the ors look like? Or 3x plus 1 is greater than or equal to 4. So let's solve these two. I'm going to scoot this one over. This one's kind of squished. 2x minus 3. Okay, here we go. So, leave this x here. We want this negative 3 to go on the other side. So since it's a negative, we get to add it. Ready? Negative and positive of the exact same number cancel out. Negative 4 and 3 is a negative 1. Now we divide by 2, divide by 2. X is less than, we have negative 1/2 here. Or 0.5. Now this one, minus 1 here, minus 1 here. We get 3x and a 3. Divide each side by 3. We will end up having x is greater than or equal to 1, because 3 divided by 3 is 1. So now, since we have our ors, this is what your graph will look like. This right here is the same as 0.5, so that's easier for me to figure out. A negative 0.5. Here's 0.5, negative 0.5, and a 1. Let's do a regular 0.5 and then a 1. And we notice that this is less than or equal to, since it's got a line, we got to color in the lines. On this side, greater than or equal to 1, here's the 1. It's got a line, so we've got to color in the lines. There we go. We're done with 45. Last one, 47. Thank you so much for being patient and watching this video. Here we go. Just because it's decimal, don't let that scare you. This x needs to stay there, so plus 0.5 plus 0.5. So that's 0.3x is less than. What do you do when you add these together? It's actually subtraction, so it's negative 1.2. On this one, we'll get to that in a minute. Now let's divide this by 0.3, divide this by 0.3, and we have x is less than, then what is 1? Then you need to calculate. You can put it in your calculator if you're not comfortable calculating this. But 1.2 divided by 0.3 happens to be 4. But this is a negative, so make sure you put negative 4. On this side, your x has this 0.4 next to it, so divide by 0.4, divide this by 0.4. So x is greater than 6. Put that in your calculator. So now let's do our graph of that. We have an or, remember? Or. So we have a 6 on this side, negative 4 on this side. Open circle. And on this side, open circle. There you are. You are done. Good luck with doing the evens. I'm sure you will do just fine.